The legacy of Two and a Half Men isn't just written in laughter. It's written in what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. Behind one of television's most successful sitcoms lies a story of extremes, where fame created fortunes and then quietly took them away. Charlie Sheen rose to become the highest-paid actor on TV, only to watch a $150 million empire collapse into chaos, controversy, and loss. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher transformed his moment on the show into something far bigger, building a billion-dollar investment empire far beyond Hollywood. Angus T. Jones, once the highest-paid child actor on television, walked away from it all, rejecting fame in search of meaning, while Concat the heart of the show, left behind a legacy that ended not in spotlight but in silence. Some of them rebuilt their lives. Others lost nearly everything. And together, their journeys reveal a truth far more powerful than any script. Because when the laughter fades, what remains is not the fame, but the choices, the consequences, and the reality no audience ever sees. The story of Two and a Half Men did not end when the final episode aired. In many ways, that was just the beginning of a very different story, one that no audience fully saw. For years, the show was one of the biggest hits on television, making millions of people laugh and turning its cast into some of the highest-paid actors in the world. Everything looked perfect from the outside, but behind the success, real lives were changing in ways no script could control. Charlie Sheen became the face of that success, earning nearly $2 million per episode and building a fortune that most people can only imagine. Yet, in a short time, everything fell apart. Personal struggles, public controversies, and difficult choices slowly took away what he had built, showing how quickly success can disappear. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher stepped into the show during its most uncertain moment and helped keep it alive. But his biggest success came away from the camera. While acting, he was quietly investing in companies, building a future that would later make him far more successful than television ever could. Then there is Angus T. Jones, who grew up on the show and became one of the most famous child actors of his time. Instead of continuing that path, he made a surprising decision to walk away from fame completely, choosing a quieter life over the spotlight. And for fans, one of the most emotional moments came with the loss of Concat, whose role brought warmth and honesty to the show for so many years. Her passing was a reminder that behind every character was a real person with a life far beyond television. As time passed, each cast member followed a different path. Some stayed successful, some struggled, some changed their lives completely. And together, their stories reveal a simple but powerful truth. Fame does not last forever. Money does not guarantee happiness. And life after success can be very different from what anyone expects. Because when the cameras stop and the audience moves on, what remains is not the show, but the real lives that continue long after the laughter fades. The journey of Two and a Half Men is more than just a story about a successful sitcom. It is a story about what happens when success reaches its peak and then slowly fades into reality. For over a decade, the show dominated television, bringing laughter into millions of homes and turning its cast into global stars. It created wealth, fame, and recognition on a level few shows ever achieve. But once the camera stopped rolling, the lives behind those characters began to change in ways no one could predict. Charlie Sheen, once the highest-paid actor on television, lived a life that seemed unstoppable, earning millions and standing at the very top of the industry. Yet his story became a reminder of how quickly everything can change, as personal struggles and public controversies slowly took away the empire he had built. In contrast, Jon Cryer showed a different path, one built on stability, patience, and consistency. While the spotlight often focused on others, he quietly continued working, building a lasting career that stayed strong even after the show ended. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher used his moment on the show as a stepping stone, turning his success into smart business decisions that would eventually make him one of the most successful investors to come out of Hollywood. Then there is Angus T. Jones, whose journey took a completely different direction. After growing up in front of millions of viewers, he chose to leave it all behind, stepping away from fame in search of a more meaningful and private life. And for many fans, the loss of Concat was one of the most emotional moments, reminding everyone that time moves forward, even for those who once felt unforgettable on screen. Each of these stories is different, yet they are all connected by one simple truth. Success can open doors, but it does not decide what happens next. Life continues, choices matter, and every person must face their own path once the spotlight fades. Because in the end, 2.5 Men was not just about comedy. It was about people and what happens to them when the world stops watching. The legacy of 2.5 Men is not just measured by ratings or laughter, but by the real lives that changed forever. For 12 seasons, it stood at the top of television, creating unforgettable moments and turning its cast into some of the most recognized faces in the world. To the audience, it looked like a perfect success story, fame, money, and a life filled with opportunity. But once the show ended, a very different reality began to unfold. Charlie Sheen, who once earned more money than anyone else on television, became a symbol of both incredible success and sudden, showing how quickly everything can be lost when life moves out of control. On the other hand, Jon Cryer proved that staying steady can sometimes be more powerful than being the center of attention, building a career that lasted long after the spotlight shifted away. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher quietly turned his time on the show into something much bigger, using his success to build a future in business that went far beyond acting. Meanwhile, Angus T. Jones made one of the most unexpected choices of all, walking away from fame at its peak, choosing a different life instead of continuing in the spotlight. And as the years passed, the loss of Concatafaro reminded everyone that behind every character was a real person whose story does not end when the show does. Some found new success, some faced difficult challenges, and some simply changed their path completely. Together, their journeys show that fame is only one chapter, not the whole story. Because when the lights turn off and the audience moves on, what remains is real life. And real life is always more complex, more unpredictable, and far more powerful than anything ever written in a script. The story of 2.5 Men is a reminder that what we see on screen is only a small part of a much bigger reality. For years, the show brought laughter, comfort, and success to millions, turning its cast into household names and giving them a level of fame few ever experience. It looked like a perfect journey. Steady success, rising careers, and a future that seemed secure. But when the final episode ended and the spotlight slowly faded, each life began to move in a different direction. Charlie Sheen went from living at the very top of Hollywood to facing some of the hardest moments of his life, showing how quickly things can change when pressure, fame, and personal struggles collide. In contrast, Jon Cryer followed a quieter path, building stability through years of consistent work, and proving that long-term success often comes from patience rather than chaos. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher uses time on the show as a starting point, stepping beyond acting and creating a future that grew stronger with every decision he made outside Hollywood. Then there's Angus T. Jones, whose choice to leave fame behind surprised the world, reminding everyone that success is not always about staying in the spotlight, but sometimes about walking away from it. And for many, the passing of Concatafaro was a quiet but powerful moment that showed how real and human these stories truly are. In the end, their journeys are not just about television. They are about life itself. Some rose higher, some fell harder, and some simply chose a different path. But all of them prove one simple truth. When the cameras stop and the applause fades, what remains is not the fame or the money. It is a life each person builds after it all is gone. The journey of 2.5 Men shows that success on screen is only one part of a much larger story. For many years, the show stood as one of the biggest comedies in the world, bringing laughter, fame, and incredible wealth to its cast. To the audience, everything seemed perfect: familiar faces, steady success, and a life that looked easy from the outside. But once the cameras stopped and the applause faded, reality began to take its place. Charlie Sheen, who once lived at the very top of television, became an example of how quickly life can change when success is met with pressure and personal struggles. His journey showed both the highest highs and the lowest lows, reminding everyone that fame does not protect anyone from real-life consequences. At the same time, Jon Cryer quietly continued forward, building a stable and lasting career, proving that consistency can often outlast chaos. Meanwhile, Ashton Kutcher turned his opportunity into something much bigger, stepping beyond acting and creating a future that extended far into the world of business and technology. Then there's Angus T. Jones, who made the rare decision to walk away from fame completely, choosing a different kind of life away from the spotlight. And for fans, the loss of Concatafaro was a quiet reminder that behind every role was a real person with a life far beyond the screen. As time passed, each of these stories unfolded in its own way, some filled with growth, some with challenges, and some with change. Together, they reveal a simple truth that often goes unseen. Fame may open doors, but it does not decide what happens next. Because in the end, when the show is over and the world moves on, what truly matters is not the success people once had, but the life they build after it is gone. The rise of 2.5 Men felt unstoppable, but like every great story, what came after was far more revealing than the success itself. For over a decade, the show dominated television, creating laughter, building careers, and turning ordinary lives into extraordinary ones. The cast became symbols of fame and fortune, living a life that seemed almost untouchable. But when the final scene was filmed and the lights slowly dimmed, the truth began to unfold. Success does not stay the same forever. Charlie Sheen, once at the very peak of Hollywood, experienced a dramatic fall that showed how quickly everything can change when fame, pressure, and personal choices collide. His story became one of the most talked about transformations in television history. In contrast, Jon Cryer followed a steady path, proving that long-term success is often built quietly, without chaos, through years of dedication and consistency. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher uses opportunity not just to stay relevant, but to grow beyond the limits of acting, building a future that placed him among the most successful investors connected to the entertainment world. Meanwhile, Angus T. Jones made a decision that few people in his position ever make. He stepped away from fame, leaving behind the spotlight in search of something more personal and meaningful. And for many, the passing of Concatafaro was a quiet but powerful moment, reminding everyone that behind every role was a real life, with real struggles and real endings. As the years passed, each story moved in its own direction, some rising, some falling, and some simply changing course. Together, they show that fame is not the final destination, but only a chapter in a much longer journey. Because when everything else fades, the money, the attention, the applause, what truly remains is the life each person chooses to live after all is gone. The story of 2.5 Men is often remembered for its humor, its success, and the unforgettable characters it brought to life. But what happened after the show ended tells a far more powerful story. For 12 seasons, everything seemed certain. The ratings were high, the money kept growing, and the cast became some of the most famous faces on television. It felt like a world where success would last forever. But when the cameras turned off, reality slowly replaced that illusion. Charlie Sheen, once the highest-paid actor on TV, saw his life shift in ways no one expected, proving that even the greatest success can be fragile. His journey became a clear example of how quickly fame can rise, and how quickly it can fall. At the same time, Jon Cryer showed a completely different side of success, one built on patience, consistency, and the ability to keep moving forward even when everything around him changed. Meanwhile, Ashton Kutcher quietly built a future beyond acting, turning opportunity into long-term success through smart decisions that reached far outside Hollywood. Then there is Angus T. Jones, who surprised the world by leaving it all behind, reminding everyone that sometimes the strongest choice is not to stay in the spotlight, but to step away from it. And the passing of Concatafaro brought a quiet sadness to the story, a reminder that time continues to move forward for everyone, no matter how unforgettable they may seem on screen. As the years passed, their lives moved in different directions, some filled with success, some with struggle, and some with change. But together, they reveal something simple and real. Fame does not define a life, and success is never the end of the story. Because when the laughter fades and the world stops watching, what truly matters is not what people had, but who they become after it's all gone. The success of 2.5 Men once felt unshakable, like a moment in time that would last forever. Week after week, it brought laughter to millions, turning its cast into global stars and building fortunes that seemed impossible to lose. From the outside, it looked like the perfect story: fame, money, and a life filled with endless opportunity. But when the show came to an end, a different story quietly began to take shape. Charlie Sheen, who once stood at the very top of television, saw his life change in ways that showed just how fragile success can be when faced with real-world struggles. His journey became a powerful reminder that even the highest peaks can be followed by difficult falls. In contrast, Jon Cryer moved forward with stability, proving that success built slowly and carefully can last far longer than success built on chaos. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher turned his opportunity into something much bigger than acting, quietly building a future that extended into business, technology, and long-term growth. Meanwhile, Angus T. Jones made one of the most unexpected choices, stepping away from fame entirely and choosing a life away from the spotlight, showing that not every path leads toward more attention. And for many fans, the loss of Concatafaro was a deeply emotional moment, a reminder that behind every role was a real person whose story continues beyond the screen. As time moved forward, each life followed its own direction, some rising again, some facing challenges, and some simply changing course. Together, their stories reveal a truth that is easy to forget. Success may change a life, but it does not control it. Because when everything else fades, the fame, the money, the attention, what truly remains is the person behind it all, and the life they choose to live when no one is watching anymore. The journey of 2.5 Men is a perfect example of how success can look complete on the surface, while a very different story unfolds behind it. For years, the show stood as one of the biggest names in television, bringing laughter, fame, and incredible wealth to the people who were part of it. It created a world that felt stable, familiar, and almost permanent. But when that world came to an end, reality began to show itself in quiet and unexpected ways. Charlie Sheen, once the highest-paid actor on television, saw his life change dramatically, proving that even the strongest success can be shaken by personal struggles and difficult choices. His story became one of the clearest reminders that fame does not guarantee stability. At the same time, Jon Cryer continued forward with patience and consistency, building a lasting career that showed how steady progress can survive long after the spotlight moves on. Meanwhile, Ashton Kutcher used his time on the show as a foundation, quietly building a future beyond acting, where smart decisions and long-term vision turn opportunity into something much greater. Then there's Angus T. Jones, whose decision to leave fame behind showed that success is not always about staying in the spotlight, but sometimes about finding a different path that feels more meaningful. And for many, the passing of Concatafaro brought a sense of reality to the story, reminding everyone that time continues to move forward, no matter how strong the memories may be. As the years passed, each of their lives changed in different ways, some filled with growth, some with challenges, and some with quiet transformation. But together, they reveal something simple and true. The end of a show is never the end of the story. Because when the laughter fades and the lights go out, what remains is real life. And real life is always more powerful, more unpredictable, and more meaningful than anything we ever see on screen. The success of 2.5 Men once felt like something that could never fade, a show that defined an era and gave its cast a life most people only dream about. For years, everything seemed certain. High ratings, steady fame, and a future that looked secure. The laughter was real, the success was massive, and the spotlight never seemed to dim. But when the show finally came to an end, the truth slowly began to appear. Life outside the camera was very different from what people imagined. Charlie Sheen, who once stood at the top of the television world, experienced a dramatic shift that showed how fragile even the greatest success can be when personal struggles take control. His journey became a powerful example of how quickly life can change, no matter how high someone rises. In contrast, Jon Cryer followed a quieter and more stable path, proving that consistency and patience can build a career that lasts long after the spotlight fades. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher used his moment on the show as a starting point, turning it into something far greater through smart choices that took him beyond acting and into a completely different level of success. Meanwhile, Angus T. Jones made a decision that surprised many people, stepping away from fame and choosing a life away from attention, showing that not everyone measures success in the same way. And for fans, the passing of Concatafaro was a quiet and emotional reminder that behind every character was a real person whose story continues beyond the screen. As time moved forward, each of their lives changed in different ways, some rising again, some facing challenges, and some simply finding a new direction. Together, their journeys reveal a simple truth that is easy to forget. Success may open doors, but it does not decide what happens next. Because when the show ends and the world moves on, what truly matters is not the fame people once had, but the life they build after is gone. The story of 2.5 Men is often remembered for its humor and success, but what happened after the show ended reveals something much more real. For years, it stood at the top of television, creating laughter, building careers, and giving its cast a level of fame and wealth that few ever reach. Everything looked stable, almost permanent, as if the success would never fade. But when the final episode aired and the lights slowly turned off, reality began to take its place. Charlie Sheen, who once earned more than anyone else on television, saw his life change in a way that reminded everyone how quickly success can disappear when faced with personal struggles and difficult choices. His journey showed both the highest success and the hardest consequences. In contrast, Jon Cryer continued forward with a steady and balanced path, proving that consistency and patience can build something that lasts far longer than sudden fame. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher uses time on the show as a starting point, quietly building a future beyond acting, where smart decisions and long-term thinking created